And welcome back everyone to the recap of round number 4 of the Sligo Chess Festival. Today I played against, I believe, one of the most promising Irish juniors, Jason Liu, FIDE master, currently rated 2181, but obviously him being a FIDE master, he was already over 2300 and has had a bit of a rough patch. Recently lost a lot of rating, but as we will see, he played a really good game against me today. And it was another very long day. I just finished. It was, again, about 4 hours, which is quite a lot if you consider that we don't get additional time after move 40. All right, so I had the black pieces. Today was only one round. Tomorrow there is a double round again. By the way, shout out to the commentators today, Alex Cholovic, Grandmaster, and Mr. Dodgy, who I think I just watched a bit of it, but really enjoyed it. And yeah, let me know if you guys did so as well, and if you have some suggestions how to improve the stream. As always, tomorrow again there will be 2 games, and I think there is only commentary for the game in the afternoon, but I will double check with that. So about the game, Jason played e4, and I went for the French, trying to mix things up, as I played the Najdorf against Zachary in the previous game with black. But he was obviously prepared against the French because I played it quite a lot recently, and especially in the last year. He went for the advanced variation, which I was actually quite happy to see, as also pointed out by Mr. Dodgy in the stream, that usually in the advanced variation you get a lot of chances to to fight for a win because the position is closed. There are most likely not going to be any trades soon, so I was happy to see that. This was all standard theory, but here I thought a bit because he never actually played the advanced variation before, so I sort of thought he might have prepared something against bishop d7, which I've usually played so far. And then I decided to mix the move order up a bit and went for knight e7 here, which has the idea, I've never played this before, by the way. The idea is that if white goes for bishop e2 now, which is probably the main move after bishop d7, then, as far as I know, black can take and go knight f5 and then immediately target the pawn on d4 with queen b6 next. So white should actually not allow this. But knight e7 does give white the option to go bishop d3, which is kind of an independent line. Just to explain that, if bishop d7, which I usually played now, bishop d3, now black can take and go queen b6 and the pawn on d4 is under attack. And now black is actually threatening to take it because the bishop is already on d7. And therefore there is no bishop b5 check here. If the knight is on e7 instead of the bishop on d7, then bishop b5 check will just win the queen immediately. So after knight e7, he played the move knight a3. There are some possible transpositions to the lines. I went bishop to d7, and I think if white goes for bishop e2 now, I don't have anything better than to transpose to one of the main lines with knight f5 or knight g6. So the main goal of this move order with knight e7, at least as I understand it, is to avoid this line, bishop e2, knight e7, and now short castle. So if white does not play with knight a3. Here knight a3 is also possible, which could transpose to something similar like in the game. Although here I don't have this extra option like I played it in the game, but generally the structure is quite similar. So knight a3, bishop d7, knight c2. As I said, bishop e2 could transpose to some other lines. And now I played queen a5, which I still vaguely remembered. I was just trying to make sure if this was at the right point here. The idea is that I'm now sort of threatening to take on d4, and he cannot recapture with the c-pawn because of the pin. So that's why white usually goes bishop d2 here. There is also d takes e5, which, if I remember correctly, should not be critical though because of knight g6. And even though white can keep the pawn on c5, I will get the important central pawn on e5 next, and black should be fine here. So after queen a5, he went for the most logical move, bishop d2, queen b6, and now it was sort of my own problem that I didn't prepare this before the game because I had just a vague memory of this. I think last time I checked it was a couple of months ago, so I was trying to recollect all of the different ideas. And I remembered that you went knight f5 in in one of the lines, in the critical line, as far as I remembered. And the critical line probably goes bishop e2, which I just could not figure out in the game. Also, still now, I just don't really understand, like, can I just... It probably doesn't work to take on b2, but it's not fully obvious, I guess, to understand that in the game. Like maybe rook b1, queen a2, but unless I'm missing something incredibly simple here, I don't see how the queen is getting trapped. Actually, it might not get trapped. I'm not so sure about this. Maybe with a stronger engine there can be some issues. But in the game he played rook b1, because the thing I remembered was after bishop e2, there's a line with knight f5. There was one game between Dura Bailey and Matthias Blöbaum. This was the only thing I could remember, and it went something like this. Knight e7 back, I think now rook b1. At some point black took on d4, went h5, and at some point there was some important move b4 for white, but it was just not in my mind at all. It was just a complete mess when it came to memorization. So maybe what I should do instead is just to play some line which I don't know at all, that I don't get into this mess of recollecting some ideas and then anyway not getting it right. But I thought this idea with queen a5 was just interesting to try out, and it does pose some practical difficulties, I thought. And it would have if I would have just played sensibly after that. Because after rook b1, okay, knight f5 was still okay. But instead, I mean, even here, well, actually, what was it? Was it maybe here that bishop e2 was the critical move? I think this was the Dura Bailey game. Or bishop d3. Honestly, I'm sorry, guys. I just don't remember this. But I'm 100% sure that it was Dura Bailey against Blöbaum. So if you're curious about that, you can check it out. So after bishop d2, queen b6. Already here, after rook b1, which is not the critical move, I could just take on d4 and go knight f5 now. And I thought if he gets the bishop to c3, then he has sort of a compact situation here with the bishop guarding the pawn on d4. But I could just play knight b4, which I even looked at in the game, but I was still trying to get this knight f5 and hoping that he would play g4 and then get the position which I analyzed at some point, but anyway, cannot remember anything. But at least here there's a big imbalance with h5 coming next. Anyway, with knight f5 there's nothing wrong, but I think this is just a simpler solution. And now knight b4. Black can exchange one pair of knights and should be maybe even bishop b5 next to exchange this French bishop, and I think black has a very comfortable position. Instead I went knight f5, he went bishop d3. Now c takes d4 is, I thought forced. I guess he can go for this g4, but he didn't like it, which I can understand because h5 is going to come and destroy his structure most likely. So bishop d3, c takes d4. He went bishop takes f5. I don't see what else he can do. Computer says that short castle is possible, quite a common idea, which I guess we did not consider, both of us, just to give this pawn and then play for compensation. Quite a typical idea in this French advance position, especially if the queen is on b6 already, when white now wins a tempo, but still the position should be playable for sure after queen c7, for example. But he took on f5, which I was expecting when I took on d4. Because he cannot take back, then I can just grab the pawn, and there are no bishop e3 ideas because I always take with check on c2. So he took on f5. Now this intermediate move does not work because white can take with the pawn and attack my queen, and then the next move the bishop can go back. So I took e takes f5. Now knight c takes d4. He has to take with a piece. If he takes with the pawn, then he has a lot of difficulties on the light squares. I can play a move like queen a6, for example, and I should be quite comfortable. So he took with a knight. I played bishop c5 after quite a thought here, because I was still trying to... I thought I saw some similar position before, and I was trying to understand it and work out the details. I was considering other moves like bishop e7 or queen a6, but then after some time I just decided bishop c5 is so logical that I just have to play it. He went bishop e3. Actually, there was one other idea, I think. Like the computer was saying knight takes d4 was also possible, and then bishop c5 with this idea, which I did not really think about. But it might not be so easy to create some chances here. I was generally already a bit concerned that the position would be too simplified for me to do something, because now queen e2 is coming, and often there can be some opposite color bishop situations, which is going to be almost impossible to win, I guess. So bishop c5, bishop e3, short castle, rook e8. I played this rather fast because now I have some pressure on the e5 pawn. He played knight takes c6, which was a pleasant surprise, but it was also difficult already for him because there is some tension on e5. I guess I'm not threatening to take here at the moment because let's just say he makes a move like a3. I thought if I take, then he can go b4, and I cannot take here now because there's a double attack. But now I'm actually thinking that even if I go back, I was concerned of knight f3 here, which attacks the rook and the queen. But I mean, this looks fantastic for black now that I look at it. Just giving up the exchange, and I have a couple of pawns, bishop pair, should be great compensation for me. Maybe I can pick up another pawn on c3. So that's why he took on c6, but now I was happy because I can finally improve my structure. I get the half-open b file, and the pawn on d5 is going to be protected. He took on c5, queen takes c5, and now rook e1. And here I played a5, which I thought was quite natural, just trying to make it harder for him to play b4. Because if white gets this bind with b4 and gets the knight to c5 and the queen to d4, then I'm strategically lost. So I need to play quite actively to not to allow that. But on the other hand, if I manage to get moves like bishop e6, move the queen and then c5, then I'm going to be the one who is strategically better because I can put pressure on the pawn on b2, play something like a5, a4 at some point, try to break through with d4, and then I would be enjoying myself. But I did not see a good way to immediately get that. Like I was thinking about the move like queen c4, hitting the pawn here and trying to get c5 on the next move. But I thought now he can go queen b3, and this endgame I thought is nothing special because I can play rook a1, rook a3, then the other rook to a1, and maybe I even have to be careful not to be worse here. So I was looking at all sorts of ideas. Also queen a5 I thought was interesting, hitting the pawn, and if he goes a3, then I thought I could just go bishop e6 and then c5 next, but I thought the problem was that he can go a4. And now he's ready to play b4 on the next move, which still might not be such a big deal, but now I was already starting to feel a bit concerned. If queen d4 comes, I won't get c5 as easily anymore. So that's why I did not go for that. I guess a5 is natural. He went queen d2, which also looks logical. Now queen b6. Also spent some time on this decision because I was actually figuring out if I should go to b6 or to a7, but it just looked ridiculous to go to a7. The only upside would be that b4 is out of the question completely, because then the pawn on a2 is always hanging. And I was thinking after queen b6 if he can actually think about going b4, and now either take with the rook or even take with the pawn, but it just looks quite good for black. Like rook a8 is coming, a2 is weak. Even if he gets this blockade with knight d4, I thought it should not be in time for him. Like now I have queen a6, some rook d3 ideas. Just felt like I should be too active here. Yeah, so queen b6, b3, and now I played bishop e6, which in hindsight is probably not, maybe not the best decision. It's objectively speaking, it's a good move, but I kind of missed his idea to now go queen f4 and have some ideas to go after the pawn on f5. I'm still not sure what else I could have done here. Computer says h6 is for example a good move. I was even thinking about this at some point, but yeah, what did I not like here? Like I think I was considering that here, for example, just to make some luft for the king, which might have been a good practical decision, because if he goes queen f4 now, I mean, okay, g5 is definitely too much for the time being, but now I can go for c5. That's the main difference, and now d5 is not hanging anymore. So after h6, he needs to make kind of a useful move. Also knight d4, I can play c5 again, and yeah, I'm not sure what else he can do. He can make a move like h3, for example, but then I'll probably get a better version, because now whenever queen f4 comes in the game, if I go c5 now, he doesn't have knight h4, which would have worked in the game, because now I have g5. This is a key idea. So h6 would have probably been a bit smarter, at least practically speaking. Yeah, queen f4 was a strong move by him. I underestimated that. Still, I'm fine objectively speaking, but Now I thought I have to be passive to protect the pawn on f5 like this, because I never really want to go g6. Like if I go c5 here, I thought he would go knight h4. Let's see if this was a correct assessment. It does seem like it. Now either I have to give up the pawn on f5, which probably I should, and try to make a draw somehow with some simplifications with a4, because if I go g6, he can go queen h6. Yeah, I was right in my calculation there. And I didn't see a way how to stop knight f3, knight g5. Like if I get the queen to g7 at least, then I will be sort of safe. But I'm just not in time to even get that. And I thought the only way to not get mated is something like this, but it just looks too depressing. Yeah, and even here he has ideas like rook e3, rook h3, and probably wins the pawn on h7 and should win the game. So then I played queen c7 with the idea to play queen d7 next. And now I was pleasantly surprised that he went c4, which was not a bad move, but I was a bit afraid that he would go a4 here. With the idea that he can always answer the move c5 with knight b5, and the knight can come to d6. And I was actually not sure what I would do here. I thought I would go h6 now, and maybe even play for some g5, just not to give him this bind, because otherwise, if I don't do anything, he has ideas with rook e3, rook g3, and some queen h6. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to play myself on the king side with this. And if h4, I was even thinking about king h7 and then rook g8 and g5 just to be the first one to get active there. Objectively, the position is equal, but I sensed some danger here, especially if the knight comes to b5 and to d6. The computer, I already checked this a little bit, does not really care even if the knight comes to d6. But as a human, it looks a bit concerning. And now I also don't have any play on the b file because the knight is blockading it. But he went for c4, which is maybe even a bit safer because, yeah, if he goes c5 now, well, first of all, he's just trying to get some trades in. Like he can take on d5 next, and that's probably his threat. I could go c5 here. In the game, I thought that knight b5 could be an idea for him again, where I was surprised that the computer says d4. And I can even be better here just with a4 coming next. I did not understand that in the game. Like even if he plays a4 himself, I thought he will get like rook d1, rook d3. And I didn't see a way how to do anything. But maybe again, like I could have some ideas with h6 and g5. And if I get g5, then I will get f4 also. And then my bishop is finally breathing again. But another thing I wasn't sure of if he just takes on e6, f6 and then takes on d5. Probably there's more play here than in the game, but it also feels like white's position is pretty safe here, and he should not be worse. So I took on c4, and I still thought when I went to this that in this rook endgame I would have some practical chances, which I think is also the case, but he did defend very well in the game. So I played rook a b8. I was also considering rook e b8, which looks pretty ridiculous, but the point is my idea is anyway to go rook b4. And if he plays now in the same way like in the game, f4, king f8, king f2, now if I go rook b4, I will just get what I had in the game with the tempo up because the rook on a8 is already hitting the pawn on a2. But what I didn't like was that now I'm not attacking the pawn on e5 anymore. And I thought he has even some ideas to get active with rook d1, rook d7. And yeah, maybe not even necessary. Maybe he can make some air for the king and try to push e6 at the right time. Yeah, not entirely sure, but I just felt like, yeah, he might have some options there, but it would have been another possible try. I went for this, still thinking I have some pretty good chances here. He went f4, now king f8, king f2, and now rook b4. And he was definitely feeling some pressure here, and I was getting pretty ambitious at this point. I thought I have great winning chances, practically speaking. Because now I'm just threatening to take the pawn, double the rooks here, and if he takes, which he should do, otherwise he would need to get passive. He does have some issues with the pawn structure. The pawn on a2 is weak. And if I get all of this, maybe can activate the king, rook c3 can come, then he might be in actually big trouble. But now he played this very good move c5, which I think is probably one of the, or not, if maybe not even the only move to keep the balance here. Because if he doesn't do that, if he like stays passive with rook b1, then c5 will come, and then rook a8. Then I will at some point make some progress. Like I could play, for example, rook d8, rook d4, and he probably needs to stay passive now for the rest of the game, and I can try to get an h6, g5 at some point. Even sometimes I could have ideas to run with the king all the way over to a3. That could be another idea, and he's just extremely passive then. So c5 was a good move. I played rook a8, rook e2, and now I played rook a3. I was also considering to play king to e7. This is why I spent some time. But now I did not like the fact that he might be able to king e3. Might be able to play king e3 now. Because if he plays like he did in the game, if he plays rook b2 now, then I thought I gained something, because now I thought I can play king e6, but still, even there he has rook d2. Still not so simple. So I played rook a3 just to activate my rook and stop him from getting king e3 at all. Played rook b2, king e7, and now his problem is if he takes on b4, then I can take on a2, and then I can pick up the pawn on c5. Actually, I saw a pretty funny line here. Like, if he gives a check, I will go to e6. And I thought if he goes rook b8, if I take on c5, he has rook h8. And now h6, rook h7 is going to win back the pawn. So I thought here now is incredibly smart to start with h5 first, or with g6, it probably doesn't matter. Because now if he goes rook g8, then I will play g6. And now at least he needs to defend. If check, then I can just go back and g6, and endgame should be a draw, but I'm definitely pressing here with the pawn up. So he played king f1, which I think was another good move, because if he goes king e1, then I might have ideas to regroup my rook to e4, where it's also targeting the pawn on f4. Not sure if this is the only move. Yeah, engine generally doesn't care, but I thought it was a good move. And now he's also threatening to take on b4, because I cannot take with check on a2 anymore. So that's why I played rook a4, protecting the pawn. Might also have some ideas with b3, after which f4 is hanging, so he went g3. Now h6, I thought this was the only real plan to do something, trying to get in g5. Played king f2, g5. I thought h4 might be a bit more logical, but now he has the downside that at least the pawn on g3 is sometimes hanging. And yeah, I could maybe target it with rook a3, but I felt like this should also be possible. Like if rook a3, maybe you can even take and give up the pawn on g3, because he is quite active. Like maybe check and like this, but yeah, it might be unnecessary. Now I'm also starting to pick up some pawns. Probably shouldn't go there. And if king f2, then yeah, what now? Maybe rook c3, but then he can again take on b4. Yeah, not so simple. I could still try to play g5 at some point. I think I was even considering that here, with the idea that if he takes, then I will get king e6, and now I can always take on e5. And I might have some initiative, because here this should be losing, because I get b2 and then rook a1. We'll get a queen. So he went king f2, I got g5, and yeah, I was very, very ambitious at this point. He was down to 1 minute, and it felt like h3. He was also, shaking his head a little bit, and with this move h3, which seemed also quite passive, I was getting pretty ambitious here, but still, I didn't see a way to win, and the position is still a draw, by the way. I'm not sure if I could have had some better ideas here to push. The whole point is that if I go king e6, then he always goes rook d2, and rook d6 is coming. And if king e7 back, then maybe he can play rook d6, but worst case he goes back to b2. So I didn't see a way to improve my position otherwise than moving my rook, which is going to lead now to this endgame. If I take and, well, this might be another idea. If I take and go h5 with the idea of going h4, I thought he could go king g3. And I did not see how it continues. He even gets some counterplay with king h4 next. Also here, if I go b3, I thought just too much material is going to disappear. Like even if I get the pawn on e5. Like here I was thinking even rook f3. Yeah, I don't think that this should be anything for black. Because the pawn endgame is probably already losing, because this a pawn is so strong. So I went rook a5, now we went to this, king e3. I gave a check here and went rook c3 now. Yeah, what are the other options? I also considered rook g2 first and then trying to get this position, but it probably doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter much, I guess. Like if he plays the same in the game, yeah, it should be the same. So I played rook c3, still having some hopes if I get the pawn on c5. And he played rook b8, which surprised me a bit. I thought he would go for rook d4 with the idea to go rook d6 next, which should also be a draw. Rook takes d6, rook d6. The only idea which I had here generally was actually this position. Did we get this position in the game? After rook takes h6. Yeah, not exactly. Because the thing is here, if he goes here, then he might have some problems. Like this is what I was trying to get, but now that I realize, I mean, probably anything is a draw here because if he gets c6, then I'm just way too passive. So it's difficult to create anything here. Yeah, he went rook b8, which is also good, trying to get rook h8 next. Rook takes c5, rook h8. Rook c2 check, king e3. Thought that was another good move. I thought if he goes king f3, then I might have some chances with rook h2, with the idea that if he takes here, I could play g4. And yeah, this might be winning. Rook h3, and f4 is weak and might fall. Maybe still a draw, but now it's starting to be very, very close. Yeah, it's already losing here. Yeah, so king f3 is actually still a draw. Rook h2, and now basically any move rather than taking here. So like rook c8, for example. Computer just holds this, which is not surprising because I have doubled pawns, rook f6 is coming. There's just not much going on. He went king e3, I gave a check, and now king d4. If he goes back here, then I can take, and now even if I'm 2 pawns up, it's maybe still a draw. But now again, it's at least very close because I will activate my king, and yeah, this might actually be losing, or at least pretty close for him. Yeah, I went king d4 though, and then took on h6, and now it was quite unfortunate that I cannot hold on to my pawn on c6. And even if I have some nice triple pawns here, it's just not enough to do anything. I'm just not in time to activate my king. He always has ideas with rook f6. I was thinking of, like in the game I went rook g1, I was thinking about rook g6 here. Pawn endgame should be winning. I'll get g5 or king e6. The idea is just to stop rook f6, but it's kind of going into the wrong direction. Like if you just go somewhere with the rook, yeah, now I cannot even move my pawns. Maybe rook h6 now is a possibility. Trying to take here next, but still, if rook c3, for example, there are probably numerous ways, but oh, maybe rook h4 probably would have been a better try than in the game, because in the game he got rook f6, and after that it was fairly simple. Like once white gets the king in front of the pawns, then it's just absolutely nothing. But as long as I can stop him, like maybe now he can even go back. I mean, it was interesting for me to figure out those endgames in general. I think they're just a very easy draw, but yeah, never really saw this so much. I had a game once where I was on the defending side, where my opponent had 2 pawns, like a pair of double pawns, and it was a fairly easy draw. And I guess it does not make a big difference. I mean, the only difference I can think of is, like, just as an example, whenever we get something like this, then for example now rook c3, then the double pawns will actually matter. Actually, they don't, because even the pawn endgame, if I don't have a pawn on f7, would now be winning because of king g4, and black would get the opposition. So yeah, probably doesn't matter much anyway. I went rook g1, he went rook f6, natural rook d1 check, king c3, and yeah, he defended well until the very end. Check, king d4, and yeah, all of the material just disappeared, and it was a draw. So obviously not the result I was hoping for. I can tell you that. But yeah, my opponent played well. I definitely had some chances where I could have maybe created, had some moments where I could have created more chances or some better practical choices, like here in the opening maybe could have taken on d4. But after that, like also the commentators were pointing out they were not so sure where I could have done something something differently. I mean, maybe the decision with bishop e6 made things a bit easier for him because now he got queen f4, which I underestimated. If I would have gone h6, this is what we were talking about before. Could have been a better idea. But it's frustrating, yeah. I mean, this position is equal. Usually the better player should be able to win. And with all respect to my opponent, I do believe that I'm the better player, and usually I should be able to win those positions. In the previous game against Zach, it was just it was just unfortunate because I had a winning position. I clearly outplayed him there, but then didn't manage to win. But this game is really, frustrating, I guess is the right word, because I was not really able to create anything. Might just be that my opponent played a great game. There's no doubt about that. He did play well, but still, even if my opponent with about 400 points less than me plays a great game, I still should be able to create something. At least this is what I was kind of taught, But it also highlights the fact that chess is getting more and more competitive. I was talking about that with a friend of mine today as well. And even if you're playing against much lower-rated opponents nowadays, it does not mean that it's a guaranteed win, especially if they are well prepared. Which, opening was out of the question in this game, but I mean, players are simply performing better and better, I think, and it's getting more and more difficult for grandmasters, for title players to actually score in many games. This is the main reason I signed up for this tournament, and I want to improve in that area. But as we see, there's still a long way for me to go, and I'm using this to just improve that area of my game, being able to create better winning chances, and hopefully with this experience and I can get something away of it and learn something from it. Still not sure what it's going to be that I'm learning, but maybe it's just experience, playing more low-rated opponents and trying to create chances. But tournament is still long, obviously. Currently losing a couple of rating points. That's the other thing. Even every game here is a must-win game for me. If it when it comes to rating, like a draw costs me a couple of rating points, but in the meantime, I have this way of thinking that rating comes and goes, and the good thing is, someone also asked this in the comment section, like how do you recover from that? The main thing that's helping me is that I play chess for enjoyment, that I can make recaps for all of you, and of course I still have some goals to improve, but it's not my main source of income. I'm not dependent off of it, which makes it much nicer for me. I mean, even after this game, obviously I'm not happy with it, but life goes on, and this is what I might be able to give as advice to people who are maybe struggling when they are not doing well. Try to find something else to get your mind off of things, and if you're not a chess professional, which I guess most of you who are watching are not, then remind yourself that losing a game or not being able to win a game is not everything that matters. Anyway, this was already quite deep. Hope you still enjoyed the recap today. I think there were a couple of interesting moments. If you did like the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also visit my socials, Instagram, X, whatever, in the comment section in the video description down below. Of course, my website, felixproberger.com. And also courses are in the video description, linked in case you want to support me. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow in the evening after a tough double round. So see you guys then.